But before jumping into my presentation, I'd like to, Michelle, if you allow me, I'd like to complement what Dr. Driessen just told you. And something that occurs to me that it is really important is that you already have your self-awareness. What I mean is you already know that you need somebody. So my advice would be, till now we watched through the slides. So we were witnesses of something that it is real. Research is important. Data is important. If we know, we can take decisions and we can act upon that. This is why it's so important to know. So my first personal recommendation would be take a piece of paper, so not the laptop, not the phone or the tablet, an old good one piece of paper, and write down exactly all the features that that person that you want to find needs to have. So from the basics to the most important, everything. Don't leave any detail outside. Just write down everything, because in this written, you're going to find out a lot of things about exactly what you need, but also about yourself. So before jumping into the action, which is something that we all do, it is always good to stop, make a pause, and analyze. So our actions reflect our thoughts. And if they are strategic, even better. So more important than I need to find somebody that, of course, naturally, you know exactly what you want. From what I heard about you, you know exactly what you want. Write it down. Write each feature, everything that you really need to find in that person. So when you go for a hunt, you know exactly what you're looking for. I hope that this can also complement a little bit what Dr. Driessen has told you already. All right? So if we don't have any other question, I'm going to share my screen if I can. Let me see, I think that I can do it. And I don't know if I can put this into full mode. Can you see my screen? Hope so.
Yes, and there's a little button at the bottom, right bottom, where you see presentation and the slider scale. Just a little bit lower. There you can press the sharing screen, the presentation mode.
Yeah, because I press F5 and does nothing. But okay,
no.
I will.
Do you see the
remote
image?
Control.
So you see the percentage. You can plus or minus the sliding scale at the bottom right.
Here.
44% it's now, and there on the left there is a little button. So if you go with your mouse to the sliding scale, the 44%.
I cannot find it. Don't you worry.
Okay. You have your mouse. If you go at the bottom,
yeah,
the right button, can you?
But don't you worry. I think that they can see. Okay. Can you see it? Can you see it? Because the thing is that I have a problem with my laptop 5 minutes before the presentation. So I had to jump into an old notebook of mine, which I completely forget how to manage. So anyway, I hope that you can see at least the slides. And the most important thing is the chat that we're going to do, and to try to jump into this journey and try to understand why it is so important, all the data, why it is so important for us to understand what does it take to become entrepreneurs, which are the obstacles that we can find, which are the problems that we can find along the road, and how to tackle them in the most efficient way. So this is why our presentation is also called How to Position You and Your Business for Sustainable Success, because this is another word that it is also important. Sustainability. As Dr. Driessen mentioned before, the thing is not that you jump something and 1 year later, you're forced to sell it, not because you want to sell it for profit, but you have to simply ditch it because it doesn't fulfill your dream. No, the thing is that the entrepreneurial spirit is to create something that you can offer to the world, something that is going to make the world a better place. And of course, along this path, you are going to be fulfilled and satisfied as a human being, as a businessman or woman, as a whole person. And we are going to talk a little bit about this in a minute. I'm going to just briefly mention, I'm not going to present myself because I introduced it at the beginning. I'd like just to mention something. I'm also an entrepreneur. So I, of course, work as a psychologist and as a psychotherapist and as a coach. And I've been doing this for 30 years. But 20 years ago, I began some ventures, different ventures. But one of them in particular that I deeply love it was a Society for Arts and Culture. I found it when I was still living in Italy, in Venice. And if at that time I would have known a tool like eScan, if at that time I would have known all the things that I know now after 20 years of research and development, and the things that in coaching we have learned, all the things that we conquered at that time in terms of connecting the whole world of arts, creating even a magazine that didn't exist at the time. We created a magazine that was the first magazine appeared in Amazon at the time. And the galleries, the exhibitions, all the things that we have done would have been done probably with less effort and much success. So I can tell the difference between knowing and not knowing, the difference between upskilling and just being there, the difference between a fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So let's jump into that. So this is a question that I have for you. Usually, as entrepreneurs, when we begin to prepare ourselves, we think about all the things that we need to have in place, right? So we think about which is our idea, we test the market, which are the opportunities out there, do we have a business model in place? If we don't, we jump right and try to find a good one, mainly for investors. We do our fundraising, we talk about with all sorts of stakeholders. We begin to develop products, services. So we do all the things that we need to do by the book, right? This is really important because without all this, we don't have anything, of course. But my question is that enough? If I have all this that you can see, it's written there. So you have even your growth strategy. So you have your plan for today and also for, let's say, 5 years from now. So we have everything in place. Is that enough to be successful? All these things is what we used to call the outer experience. So these are the things that relate to the outside, the things that we need to create for the world and the things that we are going to share with the world. But there is a component that we are not considering in this equation. And that component is ourselves. We are the entrepreneurs. We are the ones that we are going to offer this to the world. So we have another side of the coin. So if we flip it, we need to begin to talk about communication. How are you going to communicate with the world? You don't communicate in the same way to a journalist that if you have a meeting with a potential investor. You don't communicate in the same way with a future client or with a lead. You don't communicate in the same way with a person that is giving you an advice. So this is the basics. The same for negotiation, the same for the use of empathy. What about your achievement drive? What about your motivation? You are going to be hugely motivated, let's say the first 5 months, 6 months, and then what? What about your team management? What about if the team grows? The leadership development that you need to focus on, because beyond being an entrepreneur, you're going to be also a leader. That's for sure. And the most important component, what about your resilience all along the way? So this is what we call the inner experience, that it is usually totally disregarded. And the inner experience answers a couple of questions. These questions are, which are my skills? How do I use them? Which aspects do I need to improve based on this knowledge that I have on my skills? So I like to stop just for a second and to ask you, and I'm going to ask Martin your collaboration because I cannot see anything but my slide, because I like to ask the audience if you have asked yourself at least one of these 3 questions. And if the answer is yes, I'm going to ask you just to write in the chat yes. And if the answer is no, just to write a simple no. And it is important because it is data and we grow together. We understand together the things that we do, in the way that we do it, and how to improve that. So if I can see the chat, maybe...
I can check it for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'd love to know if you have asked yourself.
All those levels.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. Because, you know, in my experience, working with so many entrepreneurs from all around the world, these are questions that are almost never tackled. In fact, the main questions are related to products, how to position a product in the market, or how to find an investor, or how to find a co-founder. So things that are related to the outside and not to the inside. Okay. This is really important. And before going to the other slides, something that I'd like to mention briefly is the following. This is also important because we are human beings. So being entrepreneurs is just an aspect of who we are. We are more than that. So if we don't take care of these things, we are disregarding our health. And we need our health. We need our mental health and our physical health in place to be the best possible version of ourselves. And in fact, we have really alarming data related with the status of mental health in the entrepreneurial world. And this is something that I'm going to share in a second with you. So, briefly, I'd like to share with you also a definition by the World Health Organization about mental health. Mental health is more than the absence of mental disorders. Mental health is an integral part of health. Indeed, there is no health without mental health. Mental health is determined by a range of social, economic, biological, and environmental factors. And this is something that we need to pay attention to. What is happening with our mental health when we become entrepreneurs? And for that, we need to understand that we have to leave behind the old paradigm. Because we are in 2022. We need the new paradigm to work for us. So let's talk a little bit about this. So the old paradigm liked in the past to divide things. So, for example, the mind is one thing and the body is another, and they are completely separated. There is no connection. Well, now we know better. The mind and the body are interconnected all the time, sending inputs, sends it information all the time. Another thing, another dualism of the old paradigm is that the soft skills are one thing and the hard skills are another. In my youth, we used the term soft skills to talk about all the things that relate to the personality, and hard skills, all the things that relate to the things that we need to learn to be efficient. For example, communication was a soft skill. To learn how to use the computer was a hard skill. This is an old paradigm. They are one thing. So we need to think about union as of now. And another fundamental thing is the dichotomy between us and others. This is old because we belong to ecosystems. We are in relationship all the time with other people. We are connected all the time with other systems. Our own ecosystem is in relationship with others. So this dichotomy is really old and is one of the reasons that we are facing all the problems that we face as entrepreneurs. So, what about the new paradigm? The new paradigm is based on integration. There is a complete and absolute relation between you, of course, your family and friends, of course, your stakeholders and shareholders, and the social context you are doing business with and you are living in, and the environment. Because this is how our brain works. Our brain works integrated. Of course, we need to understand things, labeling things, and sometimes we define things and say left brain, right brain, upper part, bottom part. But our brain works based on integration. And if we want to become successful entrepreneurs, we need to understand that. I like very much this chart. And of course, you are going to have these slides for you to study them with care later on, because I don't want to extend myself a lot here. But this is a fantastic, fantastic visual about the importance of integrating personality, human capital, our performance, and everything that we're going to offer to the world, and the environment, in which way the environment and that performance is going to feed back to us. And all this in an integrated manner is going to create success. This is why we need data. This is why we need to understand the status quo, where we are at, which exactly are our skills at this moment, which are our strengths, also our vulnerabilities, because we are made of both. And we gain control if we get to know them. If I know that I'm vulnerable on certain scenarios, I can create tools to understand and maybe tackle that vulnerability, and maybe even convert it into a strength. Why not? The key here is knowledge. The key here is awareness. So let's talk a little bit about how many we are. Look for a moment at that number. It's the 8% of the global population. So we are 500 million. We are a huge amount of people. And now I'd like you to read this data. 72 of this amount that I show you now are directly or indirectly affected by mental health issues. If we compare this with 48% of non-entrepreneurs, that means that we are more exposed. 49% of entrepreneurs deal with mental health issues directly, while only 32% of others experienced them. So, not just being under the attack of certain situations, extreme anxiety, burnt out, even depression, coping with that on a daily basis, but also experiencing traits of that lack of motivation, that languishing that we might have, that confusion or fogginess, the thing that we know what we need to make our business function, but we are not sure where to start, who to talk to, what to do. This not knowing, everything is inside the mental health realm. So I'm not going to linger too much on that because I want to jump into the solutions part. I've really driven for the positive, of the coin and the things that we can really do about it. But I really wanted to share with you these numbers, this data, because we need to do something about it, and we can do something about it. So this is the entrepreneurial health crisis that we are facing, okay? Let's look at this for a second. It is a loop. It is like the dog trying to hunt their own tail. The thing with mental fatigue is the following. I'd like to join me for 3 minutes, maybe 2. If your brain is exhausted, you will feel emotionally and mentally drained. That means that creativity is going to go low. Feels that you are going to experience fogginess. It means that you are going to feel even fear in front of the uncertainty, which as entrepreneurs we know is something that we face on a daily basis. So this is something that we experience. When we are exhausted and when we begin to feel drained, our productivity is going to be affected. We are not going to be so efficient as we've been till that point, and we are also going to fail in our decision making. So this is going to create more noise and more clutter. So we are escalating here, right? And then we will begin to experience a lot of symptoms and signals in our body and our mind. Anxiety, burned out, even depression. So all this stress is piling up. And this is a vicious circle. A vicious circle that now, with the data, as Dr. Driessen showed you before, and with the coaching and all the elements that we can tackle as of day 0, we can fight efficiently. We don't need to go in this vicious circle anymore. There is no need anymore. So what we are facing here is what I like to call a crisis. And I love crisis, yes, because I'm a psychologist, but mainly because crisis is a good opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to make the shift from a fixed mindset, which is enclosed. A fixed mindset doesn't see the horizon, doesn't see opportunities, to a growth mindset. A mindset that is ready to take new risk. A mindset that is ready to embrace challenges. A mindset that knows, that has the resilience to really face all the headwinds. What do we need to do? What we need to do is exactly this, to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. An entrepreneurial mindset is going to allow us to solve most of the issues in a creative way. We are going to find solutions and new opportunities. We are going to envision the opportunities instead of seeing risk, and instead of being afraid of them. We are going to tackle them. And also we are going to be able to develop something that is absolutely mandatory, which is critical thinking. I have 3 slides more, which are really important about the importance of coaching, how coaching can help you to understand your status quo and evolve. But before going on, I'd like to know if there is any question up to this point, something that you'd like to ask, something that you would like to share. Martin, I'm going to ask you to help me here.
I'm checking for you.
Thank you.
No chat, no messages in the chat yet.
Okay.
No questions yet.
Okay. So now.
Oh, there's coming something.
Okay.
I think. No, it's not a general one, I guess. Okay. No, please go on.
Excellent. We can resume later in the general questions. So this is what we like to call a new era for entrepreneurs. Again, because we have the data and we have the coaching, we have the elements to tackle all the problems that we can face along the way. So we can begin to be proactive instead of being reactive. That means that we can be ahead of the situations instead of being just there responding of what's going on around. We can create our own path thanks to tools like eScan. Why? Because through this kind of tools, we get to know ourselves. We get to know exactly where we are at. And then we can take control and choose the best path. It empowers us. We can also sustain a path. And for that, the figure of a coach is so important. Because what we do as coaches is to take you by the hand and support you all along the way with all your questions, with all your vulnerabilities, with all your strength. We embrace your whole beings and we create the best version of yourself based on all the elements that you can bring to the table. So we as coaches are, in a way, as mirrors that we are going to reflect back something to you that is going to be a better version of yourself. Improving. Sorry?
I have a question, Maiten. There's one question, so I would
absolutely
bring it in.
Yep.
It's Thomas O'Neill. Not sure if he's an entrepreneur, but maybe he can share a little bit on that as well. He says, great slides. Please elaborate on the entrepreneurial mindset. And there's a question to it, if you may. How would you eliminate reactive role in day? But I'm not quite sure because it's not sure what you mean with that, Thomas. Maybe you can elaborate. So the question is.
Yeah, I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of things that happen in real time that you have to react to. So when you say being proactive instead of reactive, you mean reduce the amount of reactivity and be more proactive? You say you can eliminate it, but I haven't met an entrepreneur yet that can actually eliminate it. So it would be wonderful if they could.
I know it's a tricky one, but it can be done. Believe me, it can be done. It takes work and patience, but it can be done. And the trick is more or less the following. It's as it follows. When we react, what we are doing is to respond to something that is coming to us. So let's say that we see a tiger that is running into us. What we can do? We run away because we don't want to be eaten by the tiger, of course. But we can also get paralyzed because we are so afraid that we cannot find a clever response. So we cannot assess if we are, I don't know, maybe strong enough to give a good fight to the tiger, or if there is some place, a strategic place, where we can hide until the tiger passes, or even measure the distance. Is the tiger really coming to me? Is the tiger really wanting to eat me? I mean, all these assessments on the situation can be done just if we create what we psychologists call the pause. The pause is that thing that can be 10 seconds. even 2 seconds, but allows us to create an interruption between all the emotions and the things that are happening in our body and mind because of something that is coming from the exterior. And with that pause, we regain power and we can choose how to respond instead of react, and how to be proactive and not just responding to that particular situation, but also elaborating a plan for the future. But for that pause, we need first to get to know our body and our brain, because I can recommend a lot of books and articles, but let me tell you, each personality is different. So getting to know yourself is the key, because if you know yourself, you know exactly which tool to use to create that pause. At the beginning, Thomas, I think that this is your name. At the beginning, it's going to be tricky. And believe me, it's trial and error. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. But then it becomes a habit. And after a habit, it becomes an automation. So you naturally create that pause inside of your brain.
Well, let me pose this to you. What I would normally teach an entrepreneur is sometimes you have to be better at being reactive. In other words, if there's a lion coming, you don't really, or a tiger coming, you don't have to really worry about whether it's being eaten. You need to make sure you can run faster than the guy next to you that's in the same boat. So, that would keep you from being eaten. And that's what it's like to them in their minds with their competitors and trying to, survive in the entrepreneurial climate. It really, sometimes it's about reacting quicker to market forces to change. And, right. Maybe again, getting in shape and running faster would be the proactive part, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. But let me tell you another thing. This is fantastic if I can assess the situation so fast that I can be absolutely sure that the tiger is coming for me. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm mistaken and I run away, I lose my pace. I began to do something that I wasn't intended to do. I mean, running, putting effort and energy in something that, what if the tiger is, coming into my direction, but it's not, that tiger doesn't want to eat me, doesn't want to come near me, doesn't want to do anything. So I lost that time, that precious time to do something preventive because I thought that the tigers would come in towards me. This is the thing, to be able to assess the situation quickly. Position yourself better in the market. And I know that you know that this is true.
Yes.
The more you know, you're welcome. The more you know about yourself, the more you can create the right response. Because the right response might be to run away really fast, maybe be there, just don't move and don't bother because the tiger is going to be whatever. So to be able to choose is to regain control on your mind and on your brain, of course. Anything else before going into what does it take to become an entrepreneur, which is something that I presume that we are all waiting for?
Good.
Any other question? Okay, I'm going to finish this because Martin?
Please go on.
Okay, I'm going to finish this and I'm going to jump into the two final slides that are exactly what does it take to become an entrepreneur. But I'd like to mention this very briefly because these two aspects are really important. So respecting sleep, food intake, and leisure time. And this is really important because we tend to disregard that. Mainly if we are involved in very hectic business. And we tend to think that we can create space for sleeping in 6 months, or for eating well in 2 weeks, or for visiting friends and family in a month or so. So we tend to not pay attention to these absolutely important things, because if we don't have this, we have nothing. This is like the foundation of our entrepreneurial path. And the last, and not at least not at all the less important thing, is to think in systems and connections. Again, we are not alone, and we need to begin to think as eco-entrepreneurs inside an ecosystem all the time, all the connections that we are creating and that we can develop now in 5 years, in 10 years, in 50 years, even when we are not going to be here anymore. This is fundamental. So let's talk about these 5 main traits of an entrepreneurial mindset. Self-directed learning, accountability, goal orientation or achievement drive, resilience, and the readiness to take risk, the readiness to embrace challenges, and the readiness to experiment. Each one of these things will need, I don't know, maybe other 2 or 3 webinars. But as I told you, I'm going to share, of course, these slides. And these are really important traits that each entrepreneur needs to develop, and a coach can really help, mainly working with that particular personality that is inside of the entrepreneur. For this, and this is the final chart, identifying, assessing, and developing opportunities. So we can work on creativity, on the ability to see the big picture, in the flexibility for different perspectives. Also working on growth scaling. How? Developing empathy and all the aspects of empathy, active listening and storytelling included, that we all know that are mandatory. Changes along the way. Well, this is the only constant that we know, right? Developing focus, clarity, and emotional management is the key to be able to face any change. More changes along the way, of course. So we will need resilience and motivation. And keep the motivation, don't lose the momentum. Achievement drive is fundamental. And what about our stakeholders? How we are going to create an impact on them? How we are going to communicate with them? How we are going to negotiate with them? A coach is a person that is going to take all these elements based on data, based on the e-scan that you have done, based on all the things that you have in front of you that talk about you, and is going to help you to create the business based on the personality that you have in a faster and shorter time. Thank you very much for your attention.